So, good morning, everyone. My name is Diana Hoek. I am the Veterans Services Officer for the town of Sherborn, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the town's Veterans Day event. It's been a couple years since we've been able to get together, and I'm delighted that we have an audience. I was concerned who would show up, so thank you for coming. We also have a full program for you, so we'll start with the activities. It is, first of all, my pleasure to introduce our Pastor John Hudson from Pilgrim Church, who is going to begin with an invocation.
Isn't it wonderful to be back together? I can't believe it's been 3 years. It's very grateful for community. So this prayer is offered in the widest ecumenical sense possible. So let's be in a spirit of prayer. O God of peace, O God of justice, O God of love, we gather this day to pay tribute to and to thank the veterans among us, women and men who, when the call for sacrifice and service went out, they said yes. They left home and hearth and loved ones in the cause of human freedom and peace for all your children in every time and place. And so make us grateful, God, for this service, veterans stepping into the breach. But then, God, move us in this our generation beyond thank yous to lived lives of civic duty, fulfilled citizenship responsibilities, all squarely met. May you bless this day, our celebration, and our country and our world with humility, hope, courage, and resolve. Let all the people say, Amen.
All please rise for the presentation of the colors.
Flags have been secured. At this time, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, the choir from Pine Hill, who's being jammed a little. So what I'm going to ask is the scouts come back this way. I forgot to tell you to stop at the flags. No, keep coming. No, wait. Keep going. Okay.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed?
please secure the flags.
And now we have our local VIPs are here to present and share with us a few words. First, beginning with Paul DeRensis from the Select Board.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for coming. This is our opportunity to recognize and give thanks to all the veterans for their great service to our country. It was in 1918, 104 years ago, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, that an armistice was signed, bringing an end to World War I. This brought an end to the, quote, war to end all wars, because that's what World War I was called, the war to end all wars. Congress of the United States in 1938 passed a law dedicating November 11th to the cause of world peace and to be hereinafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. But then, lo and behold, World War II occurred, the Korean War occurred, and in 1954, Congress amended that 1938 statute by deleting the word armistice from Armistice Day and substituted the word veterans. So since 1954, this is Veterans Day. I learned the significance of Veterans Day through the stories from my father. My father fought in World War I. He spent 4 years of his life in a trench opposite the German army. But how his eyes would light up at the news, at the recollections of the news of November 11th, 1918, the day he got the news that the war was over. This was a day that he jumped for joy like he had never jumped before. This was a day that he cheered like he had never cheered before. This was a day that he and others took off their war helmets and threw them in the air, not caring where they landed, because they didn't need them anymore. This was the day he was told he was going to go home. This was the day he was told, at last, he could go home. So I wonder if we can take a moment and ask the veterans who are here to raise your hand or stand up so we can see who we have here today. I would also like family members of veterans to stand and be recognized, because you too bore the sacrifice of that service. For all of you, thank you for the example of service that has inspired so many. Thank you for your selfless service in peacetime and in war. Thank you for your love of country and liberty that compelled you into the service of our nation.
Thank you, Paul. And now I invite Senator Rebecca Rausch to say a few words.
Good morning. I am State Senator Rebecca Rausch, and it's a deep honor and privilege to represent the town of Sherborn in our state senate. This day is an important one for me and my family. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor who spent years trying to get here. And then once he got here to this country, he enlisted. And he went right back to his hometown in Germany to fight against the atrocities of Hitler and the Nazis. Thank you all for coming together today to express our gratitude for our community members who have served our nation. And to all the veterans here, thank you. Thank you for your bravery, your sacrifice, your dedication, and your service. We are here to celebrate and honor you. Many of you can personally attest to the weight on your shoulders that comes from returning home from combat or peacetime service. For me as a legislator, Veterans Day is always a reminder of our obligation to welcome our service people home with open arms, expressing our gratitude for their service and their bravery. On Beacon Hill, I remain committed to advocating for our veterans and their families in our Commonwealth. This past session, I'm proud to share that we had multiple successes on this front. We passed a $400 million allocation for the reconstruction of a new veterans home in our Commonwealth. We allocated over $100 million toward veteran services, mental and behavioral health supports, a women's veterans outreach program, and more. And we also passed the SPEED Act, which makes employment and educational pursuits more accessible for active military families. Every brave person who serves our country deserves that care, that support, that dignity of living their fullest lives when they get home. Our celebration and gratitude does not end today. There will always be more work to do to support our veterans, and we must continue today's same spirit when we roll up our sleeves and get back to work tomorrow. We can't do our work on Beacon Hill without your unique perspectives and your partnership to ensure that our veterans are taken care of the right way, with dignity, with honor, when they return home from service. For those of you with us today, again, who have served, thank you for your service and your integral role in our community. We are all honored to celebrate your selflessness, your courage, and your service today. To the families of our service people, we see you and appreciate your service and sacrifices as well. On behalf of a grateful Senate and a grateful Commonwealth, thank you, and I wish you a meaningful, reflective, and happy Veterans Day.
And thank you, Senator. And now I would like to invite Representative David Linsky to say a few words.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you for your service both to the country and to the town as well now. It is a pleasure to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Representative David Linsky, and I've had the privilege and honor of representing the town of Sherborn in the Massachusetts State House for the last 23 years. And I've been honored to attend every single Veterans Day ceremony since when it's been able to be held. Unfortunately, of course, it hasn't been able to be held in the last few years because we had a pandemic, but it is great to be back and to be able to be all together in this room and all together to help honor our veterans. This is part of what I'm going to call my Sherborn farewell tour. Because of redistricting, after January 5th of next year, I will no longer have the privilege of representing Sherborn as my district changed slightly. So I just want to, on a personal note, and this won't be like Elton John's farewell tour, I think. I just want to say thank you to the people of the town of Sherborn, number one, for giving me the honor and privilege of representing you for the last 23 years, but also making me feel so welcome. I often say, out of the 4,200 people who are lucky enough to live in Sherborn, I think I know 4,000 of them personally. And it has really been a great honor and a privilege, but I'll still be around. You'll still see me in Roach Brothers. You'll still see me at the Heritage. You'll see me around. And I get my car inspected at Rose's every year, too. Ed takes care of me. But I want to also talk just a little bit about the meaning of Veterans Day. You saw me stand a minute ago as a family member of a veteran. My dad, Richard Warren Linsky, Tech Sergeant, U.S. Army Air Corps, served in the Pacific in World War II. And he instilled in my brothers and I a real respect and an understanding of what it meant to fight for your country and the honor and privilege and what it all means. And for me, I put it in these terms. We had an election this past Tuesday across the country, and it was a victory election. And I don't mean that in that it wasn't a Democratic victory, it wasn't a Republican victory. It was an American victory, and most importantly, a victory for democracy. Because, you know, it was a hard-fought election throughout most of the country. And we settled our differences at the ballot box. We didn't settle it like some other countries did through guns and through bullets and through injuries and death. We did it at the ballot box. And we had a fair election where record numbers of people for a midterm election went out and voted all across this country. And we did it without bloodshed, we did it without controversy, we just went out and did it. And we did it because our veterans allowed us to do it, quite frankly. Because it's the veterans who allow us to assemble here in a place like this and celebrate Veterans Day. It's a veteran who allows us to go to the church or mosque or synagogue or none of our choice. It is the veteran who allows us to go to the library and read whatever we want to read. It is the veteran who allows us to be able to stand at a podium and say whatever we want to say. And that's the beauty of America. Look, America's not perfect. It isn't perfect. But it allows us, a veteran allows us to try to make it better. And it allows us to say it isn't perfect. And I challenge anyone to come up with a better system, quite frankly. because I'm privileged to live in the greatest state, in the greatest country in the world. Again, I want to thank our veterans. I want to thank you all for coming out here today. And I want to thank you for giving me the privilege of being involved in this wonderful town over the last 23 years. So thank you very much.
David, before you leave, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and behalf of the community, thank you for 23 years of terrific service.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker here, Commander Versaw. And we are pleased, we are joined here today by Commander Greg Versaw, United States Coast Guard, who recently became Sherborn's newest veteran after retiring from active duty following 23 years of active duty service. Commander Versaw joined the Coast Guard in 1993 as a cadet at the United States Coast Guard Academy and was commissioned as an officer after graduating in May 1997. Upon graduation, he became the third-generation Coast Guard officer in his family, continuing his family heritage of over 60 years of continuous military service. Commander Versaw initiated his career as a deck watch officer on the Coast Guard cutter Reliance out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where he served many years conducting fisheries enforcement, migrant operations, and counter-drug enforcement on our nation's waters and the high seas. He continued his career, completed 3 separate tours prior to pursuing a career as a JAG officer in the Coast Guard's legal program. Once he attained his law degree in 2008, he commenced his career as an attorney, first supporting Coast Guard missions in our nation's last frontier, Juneau, Alaska. Selected to represent the Coast Guard at the highly prestigious U.S. Army Judge Advocate General Legal Center and School, Commander Versaw attained a Master of Law degree in International and Operational Law, where he immediately applied his degree as an operational law expert at the U.S. Africa Command in Stuttgart, Germany. Commander Versaw delivered real-time legal guidance to highly sensitive military operations, highlighted by the capture of Abu Ahmed Abdallah, the mastermind of the 2012 attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya. Commander Versaw most recently served as the Deputy Staff Judge Advocate for the 1st Coast Guard District in Boston, Massachusetts, where he guided legal support for all operational units and ensured enforcement of U.S. laws throughout New England. He retired from active duty in July of 2022 and has established his permanent home as a Sherborn resident with his wife, Amy, and his 3 children, Ashley, Alex, and Max. I am pleased to welcome Commander Versaw here today.
Thank you very much, Diana, for the warm introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you just heard, my name is Greg Versaw. I've been a member of the Sherborn community for the last 4 years, and likely, as she said, the newest official veteran in the Sherborn veterans community. I'm glad to join you as part of your very exclusive group. I was asked to deliver a short presentation today as part of this year's Veterans Day festivities, so I just want to begin by expressing my thanks and appreciation for the invitation and the opportunity to speak in front of all of you here today. Now, most importantly, I do want to highlight that it is 100% due to the Coast Guard service that I'm standing in front of you here today. So, of all the wonderful memories that I have, perhaps the most significant was the Coast Guard Personnel Command's decision to give me my final assignment in downtown Boston, which allowed me to set my family up here in this new city, this tiny little one-stoplight suburban town just 20 miles west from downtown. Now, for the better part of the last 30 years, every day of my life has been started basically the same way. Waking up in the morning, skipping breakfast, but shortly thereafter putting on a uniform. My last name was stitched over my right breast pocket, and U.S. Coast Guard was stitched over my left. Every day I had the daily reminder that I was serving a higher purpose, following the traditions of the countless men and women who fought and died to protect those liberties and freedoms that we as Americans hold so dear. My name tag was a reminder that I represented my family, and my father and grandfather served honorably throughout their careers, and a daily reminder to continue the legacy of the proud service that our family had given to our great nation. Every day I walked in public wearing my uniform, realized that I was representing something larger than myself. I was representing the United States government, I was representing the military, and I was broadcasting to the citizens that I was serving them, serving their country, and my purpose was to make sure that they felt safe on their waters, their environment was protected, and they were protected against all threats from terrorists and other similar dangers. Now, as Diana stated, my career started on the shores of the Thames River, about 100 miles south of here in a small city of New London, Connecticut, as a cadet at the United States Coast Guard Academy. Me and 270 of my closest friends walked through the gates and left our former lives behind. Classmates hailed from different walks of life across the country. We had representatives from Florida to Alaska, California to Maine, and all parts in between. Although there were many differences between us, the one thing that united us was our shared love of our country and the constant pursuit to learn what it meant to be an effective officer and lead men and women to the next generation of leaders in our small but very proud service. 4 years later, in a sunny day in 1997, I received my commission and set out on a new adventure, sailing the seas as a law enforcement officer on the Cutter Reliance, a 210-foot ship homeported just north in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The next 4 years were full of adventure, a young adult finding his way as a professional military officer, out on the front lines, and the tip of the spear for military operations for the next 2 years. I spent my days up and down the Atlantic coast enforcing fishery laws, chasing drug runners throughout the Caribbean, and repatriating economic migrants back to their countries who were illegally trying to enter our country, violating our nation's immigration laws. It was far more exciting than what many of my peers from high school were doing. I was truly living an adventure, visiting places far and wide, which for a young man in his early 20s felt like what just a great adventure. 4 years later, September 11th, 2001. The memories of that day are as vivid today as the day they occurred. Stationed in Washington, D.C., I remember watching with a group of my shipmates the events of the day unfold in a conference room. After the Twin Towers collapsed, I was talking to my wife on the phone about what just happened. My wife remarked that the ground of our Alexandria home just shook. A few moments later, I walked over to a window to see smoke billowing over the river, the Potomac River, where the Pentagon stood. Our nation was under attack, and a wave of uncertainty swept across me, not knowing what was next. D.C. was obviously a target, and we didn't know what to expect as far as the extent of the terrorist attacks on our nation. At the end of the day, my normal drive home took me right past the Pentagon. I can still smell the smoke and the fire as I drove by while firefighters were diligently trying to extinguish the flames. I prayed for the unknown number of people feared dead in the fiery tomb as I drove by, and what I feared to be, at the time, tens of thousands of people who had died earlier that day where the World Trade Center had previously stood just hours before. Although we learned the numbers were roughly 3,000 people, the images of New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania were seared into the psyche of every American and forever transformed the way that we lived our lives. Personally, the adventure I sought at the Academy, now it had been transformed to a renowned sense of purpose. Over the next several months, as our nation came to terms with fighting the new battlefield of terrorism, the Coast Guard assumed a new role. The flagship agency in the newly formed Department of Homeland Security, I was honored and proud to have the opportunity to write the laws that would reshape how our nation looked at security. The Maritime Transportation Security Act transformed how commercial shipping was conducted to protect the 95% of foreign trade that uses our nation's ports and waterways to ship goods around the world, as well as the people coming into and out of our country. At that time, I truly felt as part of a team that was charged with defending the American way of life that was very clearly under attack by those who overtly stated their goal was to destroy our country and our way of life. Fast forward 14 years, my career brought me to Germany, where I had the opportunity to join my brothers and sisters across all of the armed forces of the United States Africa Command. As a member of the Office of Legal Counsel, I was now providing legal advice to the top generals and elite special forces units tasked with capturing, in some cases, eliminating members of the terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, who were actively planning and carrying out deadly terrorist attacks against U.S. forces and our allies throughout the African continent. Although these operations were being conducted thousands of miles away from the United States homeland, the last 20 years had demonstrated the distance does not really insulate the United States from attack as it had to up to that point in our country. My time at AFRICOM was highlighted by the capture of Abu Ahmad Khattala, the mastermind of the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, where I watched in real time the Special Forces members capture Khattala in a seaside hut in the outskirts of Benghazi. Although not directly involved in the actual assault, the legal staff played a critical role in ensuring the legality of the operation, reviewing proposed operational plans and developing rules of engagement to ensure U.S. soldiers were compliant with the international laws of armed conflict, which ensured that the operations were carried out with minimal risk to local civilians. Every day I worked alongside the men and women whose sole allegiance was to defending our nation and people from all threats, foreign and domestic. As we're coincidentally 3 days removed from Election Day, I can't help but think about how divided this country has been in the political landscape. After weeks and weeks of negative campaigning, the climate is sometimes difficult to witness as it comes to the crescendo of Election Day. I am very thankful that Veterans Day comes so shortly afterwards, a day that highlights the many differences we have that as a nation. Just 3 days later, we have today, a day when we can both parties remember and celebrate that there is much more that brings us together, a sense that we have much more in common than we sometimes appreciate, and a unity that transcends party lines, which is where our focus seems to have been the last several weeks. I'm sure I've worked with thousands of Democrats, Republicans, independents, and never once did I ask any one of my shipmates where their political allegiances were, and never once did I care. There was security and comfort knowing that while everyone outside had their own personal opinions and biases, they were all left at the door when I put on my uniform, because we were all united in the common purpose of defending our higher calling. In the Coast Guard, we use the term long blue line to represent my place alongside the hundreds of thousands of Coast Guardsmen who have served in the past and are serving today. I will forever be humbled to be associated with those people, including those who made the ultimate sacrifice to allow us to be standing here today grateful for all the liberties that we enjoy. But when I think about the opportunities that I've had to serve, it is sometimes selfish just to think about only the sacrifices that I and other service members have made. All too often, the military family is overlooked as far as the sacrifices that they make too. I saw firsthand the disruption it causes in the family life when the military member deploys for an extended period of time. Their spouse is left alone to care for the children, to keep the family running, and to do so with the uncertainty of when their spouse is going to return, or even if they are able to come home in the future. For those that do, we ask our husbands, our wives, and our children to pick up everything they have, say goodbye to everyone they know and love, and start all over again in some unknown community every few years. I know for myself, my wife and I have lived in 10 different homes over our 21-year marriage. My older 2 children would change school year after year, all without a vote on whether or not it was fair. And many times it was without even a thank you. It just comes with the territory of being in a military family. I don't know any of my military friends and peers who would have reached the levels of success in their careers without the love and support of their families. So please remember them as you think about who to thank during Veterans Day as well. So as I still am new to this transition in my post-military service life, I am forever grateful for the opportunities that the military has provided me, but most of all, I am proud to have joined the countless men and women who have continued to serve every day and who have dedicated their lives to our country. I appreciate that my family has found a town that is so ready and willing to accept my family into this community, and all of my friends and neighbors routinely thank me for my service. Having traveled around the world, I have had the privilege of seeing different countries, cultures, customs, governments, and meet with the people who live in those communities. And in every place that I have traveled, I always return home thankful for the gift of freedom and the prosperity that we enjoy as an American. I humbly recognize that my contributions for protecting and preserving our way of life are seemingly small compared to what others have done before me and would do every day. But I am thankful to have had the chance to do my part to serve our country, and I'm appreciative of the support and recognition that the citizens of this country have offered to me to thank me for my efforts. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. I look forward to being a part of this community for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Versaw. On the part of the town of Sherborn, we're delighted you decided to call Sherborn home. And now I'd like to invite Mike Kickman to come up to present the results of the essay contest at Pine Hill and at Dover Sherborn High School.
Hello again. You know, there are many highlights of this important Veterans Day event. The attendance of all the veterans here today is the highlight. And the number of guests, friends, select board and presenters here to honor these veterans. The attendance of the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, Brownies, and the Pine Hill Chorus is a highlight. Each and every one in this room and in the hallway is in and of itself a highlight. There's no question that Veterans Day is certainly a highlight in the town of Sherborn. My purpose up here is to present another special highlight. Each year we announce to the Pine Hill fifth graders and the Dover Sherborn students the opportunity to complete an essay titled, "What Veterans Day Means to You, to Me." We received many essays from Pine Hill and from Dover Sherborn High. In fact, I think we hit a record. Pine Hill sent us 55 students who wrote, and the high school, 52. So you can imagine the effort put in to determine a winner from each of these wonderful essays. So, with that, as I say, a very difficult choice, but we have come down to the bottom. And let me introduce to you our winner and presenter from Pine Hill first, Lucas Page. We look forward to your talk. I'll get out of your way, I promise.
What Veterans Day Means to Me by Lucas Page. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day until the owner of a shoe shop named Alfred King said that all veterans should be honored, not just the veterans who won the war, but also the veterans who worked so hard to protect our country. Veterans Day celebrates the day that World War I ended. World War I officially ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. There are about 25 million veterans alive today. Veterans Day is an important day because it is a day that veterans that served our country get recognized for who they are. Veterans Day celebrates Americans that have fought for our country. The U.S. military has 5 branches that get celebrated on Veterans Day: the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard. When military officers get deployed, they have to leave their families knowing that they might not get a chance to see them again, knowing that goodbye might be goodbye forever. Military officers are brave going into battle to protect our country, knowing what the consequences might be. That is why they get a day of recognition called Veterans Day. Veterans protect our country to keep our flag raised, to keep our country safe, to give lives to the people that would be dead if they didn't do what they do. They give help to the people that are injured, and they give hope to the people that know that the battle might be lost. On 11/11, the Germans surrendered to the U.S. and their allies, mainly the French and the British. The poem Flanders Fields described the battle by saying, "In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row and row." The crosses in the poem are for the people that died serving our country. The poppies growing where the people fought is like hope growing for the future of our country. Veterans Day has evolved from a great time in history to be what it is. Even though it has been celebrated for over 100 years, it is still celebrated to honor the bravery of the soldiers that have fought wars for our country. The veterans have fought many wars, they have lost many friends, but they kept persisting through the mud and blood of the battle. Freedom isn't going to be given to you on a silver platter. There was a war involved. Many people died, men, women, and children, people who gave up their lives for our country. Veterans hope that it does not end in bloodshed, but sometimes they can't stop the war that is coming. What Veterans Day means to me is a day to honor the people that fought for our country, people that gave us freedom and peace. They are people who care for our world and save our world. Veterans are heroes to look up to. They are people that are brave, proud, and people that care. They care about people's safety. They care about our country. They fought in the military, and it doesn't matter if they chose the Army or the Marines or the Coast Guard or the Navy or the Air Force. It doesn't matter. They all fought for our country, and that's what matters.
Lucas, where'd he go so fast? Congratulations, that's a gift certificate from the Veterans of Sherborn. Once again, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our winner and presenter from Dover Sherborn High School. He is William Goldman. We look forward to your talk.
This is my What Does Veterans Mean to You essay. Veterans Day, held on the same day as the Armistice, which marks the end of hostilities in the First Great War, is the commemoration of our brave soldiers who have fought long and hard to maintain our freedom. The veterans that we celebrate today come from different backgrounds, share different stories, and believe in different things, but they all have one trait in common: their selflessness and strength to stand up and protect our nation and all that it stands for. Every day, members of our armed forces put their lives at risk to ensure the well-being of our nation. On land, in the air, and across the sea, fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, siblings, and good friends work tirelessly to defend our freedoms. Working through harsh conditions without the reassurance that they will return home, these heroes never turn their back on us, no matter how difficult the challenge. Their unwavering faith in our nation and its people is something that we must uphold. Today, let us show our veterans that we are worthy of the gift of freedom, that their faith in us is justified. Let us show them that we, the people of the United States, are grateful for everything that they do, every action that brings us one step further in our journey of freedom. Today, I thank my own veterans, members of my family who have served our country. In World War II, my great-uncle Matthew fought on the beaches of Normandy, Naval Corps Demolition Unit 11. His Purple Heart is but a symbol of his bravery and the fearlessness of those who fought beside him. It fails to depict the fear and loss that accompanied their hard-fought victory. In the Korean War, my grandfather was drafted and served alongside many other brave souls, all of whom rose to the challenge and fought for their nation. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The bravest men and women who defend our nation protect these natural rights that we hold so dear to our very beings. Their sacrifice and selfless courage are immortalized in tales from every century since our nation's founding. Stories of their heroism and struggle remind us of how much we owe to these individuals. Over time, our veterans have endured so many trials, yet at the center of all of their sacrifice, one thing stands clear: hope. The hope that their actions will protect our liberties, the hope that their struggle will forge a better future, and the hope that their sacrifice will one day allow a generation to fulfill their own hopes and dreams, unburdened by conflict and pain. It is a hope that relies on us to support and recognize all that our veterans have done for our nation. Both at home and abroad, they strive to bring this peace to the entire world, and today is but one day of many for us to show respect and gratitude for those who most deserve it. Thank you.
Well, you know enough to stay. I don't have anything for you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those excellent essays. So it is my duty now to end our Veterans Day event for today. I first would like to thank our sponsors. Would like to thank Roach Brothers for providing monies for the paper goods. And I would like to thank Hometown Printing for printing the invitations that were sent out to all our veterans. They did it for free, which is very cool. And I would also like to thank our Town Veterans Day Planning Committee, who put in a lot of work to make this all come together, especially our Assistant Town Administrator, Diane Moores, who did like everything that we didn't do. She did a lot behind the scenes. I wanted to thank our VIPs for coming. Thank you to you and to our guest speaker, and to all the Pine Hill and high school essay writers. I remember being a little kid and writing was like, you guys did great, really great. And of course, I would like to thank our veterans, because without you, what would be the point? There would be no day. And for the family members who came and other members of the public. And so to everybody, I would like to invite you to have lunch with us. And please eat up, or Diane Moores is going to be at me. So please enjoy. Oh, and remember to everyone, this presentation, this event has been recorded. So if you have family members or other veterans who were unable to come today, they will be able to view it at a later date. So thank you. And thank you for everyone for coming. Okay. Oh.
Quiet, please. Thank you.